Everyone. Thank you. I see the comments have been off the wall. So glad to see you guys and welcome. We have Kelly here to go deep with what we have been talking about with Sasquatch, Nephilim and the Watchers and stuff again. So I'm Nature Infused Ash, foraging with Bigfoot, awakening humanity alongside Bigfoot. And we have a special guest, Kelly, and she has, I ran across, I guess, her about a month ago and love the topics of what she was bringing up on her page on TikTok. So thought, hey, what better person to bring on than Kelly herself? And like I mentioned earlier, that she has a couple courses and background with the Dr. Judd Burton's Biblical
Yeah.
Institute, of anthropology. So this will be good.
Yes.
Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. I'm so nervous. This is like my first, I did a podcast with the Bump podcast with Bo, but it wasn't live. So I'm so nervous.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, the community is so supportive, like I mentioned earlier, and I know I used to be the same way, like, oh my goodness, it's alive. I was pushed out of my comfort zone, and now it's like I'm
Right.
so grateful that I get to do this.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So,
Yeah.
welcome, Maynard and Melanie, all of these guys. Okay, wow, that's a lot. Okay, so when you guys want to start popping in your, questions for Kelly or myself, I guess I where I would like to start is this past summer has brought out, I guess, a lot of, because I do boots on the ground research with Sasquatch, but really just exploring the wilderness. I have a passion for that.
Yeah.
And what I started to discover, or how I've been led down this trail of Sasquatch and stuff like that, it started in 2021. And this summer, a lot of biblical stuff started to come out. And it was like, okay, so, you're seeing the light of certain situations in the dark of certain, even with people and stuff. And it's like, wow, the one profound experience would have been in July, where we were doing sound bowls and we were bringing the coherence of the land and like just the area together. It's like you could see the energy come together,
Yeah.
and it was so cool. And then all of a sudden, a Sasquatch appeared to the right down. It was about 100 yards away. And I was like, whoa. And the message, like, I don't channel these beings. They just will all of a sudden say something telepathy wise. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness. And they're like, you're purifying the land. You're bringing the light. Oh my gosh, there's so much purification. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, we started to walk up the trail to go see where it was, to see if we could see tracks or any prints or anything. And next thing you know, the tent goes flying across the road, and we're
Oh
like,
my gosh.
whoa. Yeah, there was no wind, no wind. And we're like, okay, it's blocking the road. And they said, oh, we're just blocking the road because next thing you know, about 30 minutes later, someone drove down the pathway, and it was
Oh
like they
wow.
were wanting that energy to be blocked. And I was like, whoa. And then all of a sudden you could feel the shift of energy in the land go from more of a light coherence to like a
Mhm.
darker energy. And I was like, whoa, did that just happen? And that's where it's
Right.
like, okay, what are we actually dealing with? And there's so many different perspectives, and I would love to hear your
No,
thoughts on
there, I
that.
mean, there really are that I would have wigged out. I would have absolutely wigged out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I absolutely believe you. I mean, when I say we, I mean me.
Yeah.
My partner and I have 160 acres here in the mountains in Arkansas.
Oh, nice.
But we have a house in town that we stay at. So the acreage is raw. It hasn't been developed in hundreds of years, but there are ruins of old homesteads and things. I'm like 1,000% sure that we have Sasquatch on the property just because he has been gifted things
Mm.
before. He's tried to kind of explain it away, but then he came home one night and he was like, all right, what do I need to know about these things? So I was like, tell me why. Um, but he's been clearing roads or fire breaks through the
Mm.
property
Yeah.
before we do the controlled burns. And this one particular road that he put in, it's like a loop. Okay. And this is way back off in the boonies. There's not random people showing up. I mean, this
Right.
is smack dab in the middle of nowhere.
Nice.
So he had gone along the path and was coming back around, and he's on the side by side, and right dead smack in the middle of the trail, again, one way in, one way out, there's a perfectly bleached cow skull. And it's just placed right in the center of the path. There was no dirt on it. There was nowhere that it could have like tumbled
Yeah.
down off of something. It just like appeared out of nowhere. And he'll have things like this happen. But that brings up a really great question, because you've got some people that say, oh, with Sasquatch, it's just, a giant ape that's yet to be discovered. They're very much the flesh and blood.
Yeah.
But then there's the other side of it that is like, no, there's something more
Oh
spiritual
yeah.
involved with these beings.
Yeah.
And I think I'm really excited to kind of see the shift of that happen in this space, because honestly, how I even learned about Sasquatch, Dogman, crawlers, any of those things, was through a biblical channel, and
Mhm.
she brought it up, and I was like, "What?" And my mind was blown, and I've just been down the rabbit hole ever since.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah, that's. I think that we are dealing with a yes and situation.
Hmm.
So, I do believe that these are remnant of the Nephilim, which are the offspring of the rebellious angels that descended onto Mount Hermon, copulated with human women and birthed giants. So, from there, that is where you have the Nephilim. And then at that point in the Bible, it says that they began to sin against everything, against humans, against animals, against the plants, against everything. So you have this like genetic altering that was
Yeah.
happening, So we even see that the whole reason that Yahweh had to send the flood was because their prime directive was to completely corrupt every single bloodline of humanity so that the Messiah
Hmm.
couldn't be born. And they
Hmm.
were almost successful with that. So I think it's a yes and situation. And then that's kind of where it ties in with like, black ops within our government, and, what they could be manipulating, that some of these very well could be flesh and blood creatures that actually have some spiritual capabilities, or, extraterrestrial capabilities, however you want to say it.
Hmm.
They're weird. They're weird.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and see, and that's where I've noticed, like, just by doing this, the only reason I came on the path of Sasquatch, well, I mean, that was just divine timing. That was the universe source, however, like
Yeah.
creator that put me on this path. And I was like, what? Okay. But my heart was
Hmm.
so open, so into the spirituality and that type of stuff of Sasquatch. But then I have the physical, the physicalness of Sasquatch. And it's like very
Yeah.
interesting. But I've seen the portals, even going like through liminal space and stuff. And I can
Hmm.
go very interesting. I find that nature is like the quantum realm itself, right? Like it's like, okay, we're going from the matrix, which is the city living, to the
Right.
real world, which is like
Right.
the quantum. And it's like, okay, interesting. Even
Yeah.
like with the breaks and everything, like being energy, like they're not just like you said, like a physical flesh and blood. They're
Right.
cloaking. Like I've seen them cloak. They're
Yeah.
they're teleporting. I have interactions here at our place, and it's like I don't live in the middle of nowhere, but it's not like I live
Mhm.
in town, but we're on the outskirts. There is a river and
Yeah.
stuff. It's like the ability to transport themselves or it's like,
Hmm. Well,
yeah,
you hear the stories all the time of people that are following the tracks, and they literally just disappear,
disappear. Yeah.
like out in the middle of the field. And then, there are several testimonies. I mean, Scott Carpenter, rest his sweet, sweet soul. He was
Mhm.
one of my favorite. He wrote a book, Nephilim Among Us, which is incredible because he talks about they actually had a language, that they were using a
Mhm.
language. And he broke all of that down. And he actually has videos on his channel of portals opening, and you can literally see this being coming out of the portal. And he was not one of them. Scott was very
Yeah.
much one of us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
his untimely passing is truly, truly unfortunate. But
Mhm.
we've seen a lot of that in the truther
Right.
space,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
of 2020. It's
Right.
scary.
Absolutely, and that's just because there's more light, and then, like, people say, well, they talk about all these other cryptids and they allow that to go on, but as soon as you go down, to Sasquatch or Bigfoot, it's like they totally
Yes.
doesn't get away, don't talk about that. See, like when I'm out there, what I have felt is my gifts have come online more. And I mean, like, that's,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say really mind speak. I don't know why people label it as mind speak. It's telepathy, it's the heart, it's opening up the heart center. It's kind of like even what am I trying to say? Like teleportation, frequency
It's
for
an
levitation.
energetic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's energy. It's an
Yeah.
exchange of energy is really what it is. I think that we have our species as a whole, we have really bad amnesia. There's this lie within science that humanity right now, we are at the top pinnacle of human existence, and it's simply not true. We have devolved as
Yeah.
a species
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
significantly
Yeah.
far. I mean, we really have, and that's what, like in the book of Enoch and in the Genesis 6 conspiracy, I hope that might be mirrored. But Gary Wayne's book, it's a huge book, but it talks about all of this. And, that I have a biblical worldview, just kind of an overview of myself and where I come from. I was raised Mormon, and by the grace of Yah, was saved out of that. My mom and I, my brother and my dad, we were all saved out of that very young. But having been raised in a cult,
Mhm.
I kind of started to pick things out, here and there.
Mhm.
So I went from
Yeah.
that in childhood to, I would have called myself an atheist, but I think really what it was is that I was mad. I was really mad at God, and I could not reconcile the evil and the darkness in the world with the idea of this all-knowing, all-loving creator. It was
Mhm.
really hard for me to
Yeah.
reconcile. So I had 5 surgeries in a 2-year time period and ended up addicted to painkillers,
Mhm.
which then went into, for 13 days I was using IV heroin while I was pregnant with my
Yeah.
daughter. And then I tried to overdose. I did. I tried to overdose. And when I woke up from that, I was like, ooh, I was so panicked. But then there was also that thought in the back of my head of like, I can't even do that right. Are you serious? But that was when I really got on my knees before God. And I said, look, if you're real, if you're out there, I need you to make a move because I
Yeah.
want to die.
Mhm.
Just a few hours later, my mom will tell you, she may be on in the chat somewhere
Yeah.
there, but my mom will tell you that, God woke her up and said, Kelly's using, and led her to my stash. I mean, I was very much a closet addict.
Yeah.
I didn't date dope boys. I didn't hang out in trap houses. I didn't anything. Like I was the one that your parents would warn you about. Like I was the bad apple.
Mhm. Mhm.
And she found it. And then that night I was in treatment. I went into an antepartum unit, which is, it was in Dallas, Texas. It is the only place in Texas that will detox pregnant women. And thankfully, it was just 35 minutes down the road
Yeah.
from where we were. And I did like a 40 some odd day slow detox and refused to go home on a methadone maintenance program because I knew at my core that this stuff was evil. It was demonic. Like I was having wild experiences of seeing and literally battling demons like coming out of my body, that I
Wow.
didn't have any frame of reference for that in spiritual warfare and what any of that meant. So I was released on July 4th of 2011, and then my daughter was born on August 31st, 2011. She's born absolutely perfect. That is such a huge
Amazing.
blessing.
Yeah.
When I've asked Yah to show me like where was he and all of that, he just showed me having my daughter like
Mhm.
this wrapped in his
Right.
hands,
Yeah.
in utero. But I actually ended up going to a faith-based rehab program. It was a mommy and me program after my daughter was born because even
Mhm.
though I was clean, I still had the addict mentality. And that is where the Lord kicked the door wide open to spiritual warfare and showed me this stuff is real. Yes, that evil is real, but so is good. And he really got in
Mhm.
there and showed me that. And I have just been on this uh, experience, this healing and growing
Mhm.
experience ever since then that I never could have imagined would even be possible. So if somebody comes to me with a wild story, yeah, brother, it probably happened. I believe you.
Yeah. It's like I can't question
You,
that just because of what.
no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. So I think that we are in the midst of a huge awakening.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, with that, I do think that there is a lot of deception. And in the modern day church, in the Americanized church, there's a hub of deception that is in there. That's why we see all of these pastors falling, all of these, spiritual leaders falling, um, because they are part of the great deception. They're deceived that's in there. So I say that to say this: I am not a theologian. I am not, any, so I don't have any letters behind my name. I'm like 100% autodidactic. So
Yeah.
with the help of the Lord and my own reading and doing, that is where I'm at. So anything that I say, don't believe a word I say.
Right.
Take everything that I say, take it back to the word and
Yeah.
ask, is, because I am not the be all end all and I will never claim to be. And if
Mhm.
I don't have an answer, if I don't know, I'll tell you, I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Right. It's like, that's what I have to say. I don't know. I've never
I don't
experienced it.
know.
I can't say anything about
Yeah,
that. Right. Yeah.
exactly.
I
Exactly.
understand that. Yeah. Awesome.
So
Well, let's see if
it's
any.
very much a blessing. That's what I was
So
going to
much.
look at down here.
No. So Zach asks, what is some evidence that you have seen, Kelly, that supports Anunnaki Nephilim that is not a book, which you find very compelling for others to see or know?
That is not a book. Well, I really am not sure outside of that, other than taking what I have read. And there's a lot of podcasts. I love podcasts. I love listening to other people's stories. Even in the word, it says that, the power is our testimony. And in sharing our testimony, that is where, the glory of Yah shines through.
Yeah.
So, really it's been through other people's discussions and piecing together things that I have read, because it's like quilting this really massive quilt, and each person, each story, each book, each whatever, it kind of comes together as a patchwork quilt.
Mhm.
So if you're not one to like to read very much, because I know like this, that's intimidating. That's a big daddy right there. Trust, I'm not even all the way through it, not gonna lie to you at
Yeah.
all. Some of my favorite podcasts that really share this, and specifically speaking about the Nephilim, the Bump podcast with Bo Kennedy. He is fantastic. I think everybody should go and listen to the Epic of Esau, and we can get into that a little bit if you'd like. But it talks about, Gilgamesh or Nimrod, and how Esau was this furry person. He had red hair from head to toe, and it was, thick like a goat, and all. I mean, sounds awfully squashy to me, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
But he goes through this whole story about the garments that Yah made initially for Adam and Eve when he had to close their nakedness after they sinned and then were cast from the garden. That's a fantastic one. Anything that Bo puts out is fantastic. He also, I can't remember the name of the series, but he put together, it's like a 3 or 4 hour series talking about drawing the connection between, the fallen angels, the Nephilim, and all of that through a number of different experiences. So that's a
Mhm.
great one. Blurry Creatures, Blurry Creatures podcast. Shout out to the Blurryverse. You guys are amazing. They go deep into this stuff. And I mean, you can literally start anywhere, but they have, that's actually how I got connected with Dr. Burton, to take the courses. And that is very heavy into reading. So if reading is not your jam, that's probably not the course for you, because it is very reading intensive, but it's so worth it if you were into this kind of stuff. Anything the Blurry Bros put out is great. The Confessionals podcast with Tony Merkel, that's
Mhm.
another one. And he goes deep. I mean, and he has, and I will say all three of these are, the hosts are, from a biblical perspective, but they bring all types of people on. I mean, Tony has had on practicing witches, practicing warlocks. I mean, people of all
Wow.
sorts of different, because like I was saying, that tapestry that we put
Yeah.
together, he wants to hear what they have to say. It's really incredible. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend.
Yeah. It's putting yeah. Yeah, it's putting that puzzle together because that's like
Yes,
me. Like, I want to go into the bush, and every time I have a live or everybody like comments and shares their perspective, I go in and I'm like, oh, yeah, this person said this. And then you put that puzzle
yes,
piece here, and then you look at that, and it's like, oh my goodness, it's just building a puzzle. It's like,
yes,
it's unbelievable. I love it. Everyone's
yes,
different perspectives for sure.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's
Um,
important for sure.
yeah. Lottie Da Farm says, I think we were crossed with them from the beginning, and Neph are different. I'm not
Cross
sure.
with,
I'm
yeah,
not. You'd have
can
la-di-da
you
if you could.
expand on that?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
a little more. There's so many la-di-da
Yeah, if
was
you can just expand on that, because I definitely want to, I want to try to answer that question, for sure.
so do you think the giants and, like, Nephilim are different? Or
So Nephilim is very much like an all-encompassing word, and this is one thing that
mhm,
definitely is different. So the fallen angels and Nephilim are different. Okay, so the fallen angels are the progenitors of the Nephilim. So a Nephilim is really anything that is like a hybrid. It's that
mhm,
half angelic, half human hybrid. The giants were the first generation Nephilim, but then they started to sin against, animals and plants and all kinds of things. And then that's where we get Sasquatch, Dogman, the centaurs, the minotaurs, all of those different things. And it even talks about how, I can't remember if it's in Enoch or the book of Jasher, but it talks about how the women who copulated with the fallen angels, that they were turned to sirens, and basically like damned to be stuck here because this is my best understanding of it. When the fallen angels came down onto Mount Hermon, they made a legal pact with
mhm,
humanity. So it wasn't just like they came in and were, I think I have to tailor the way I say this because we're on YouTube, but they weren't just raping and pillaging and plundering as they willed. They entered into a legal contract with humanity and said, hey, look, give us some of your women, and we are going to give you knowledge. And in the book of Enoch, it goes through and it just
mhm,
will. Now, women did not hold the same status that men did at that time. So whether or not every woman was, yeah, let's go, or not, there's really no evidence one way or another. But what I do know is that the spirit realm is extremely legalistic,
mhm,
and the Lord follows His own laws. That's why this was allowed to happen, because humanity willingly entered into this contract. We gave permission. We
mhm,
gave permission for it to happen. Now, whether or not the fallen angels knew that their offspring were going to turn into these gigantic, massive, insatiable beings, it really doesn't address that.
yeah,
But what it does say is that they loved their children. They absolutely loved their children. And part of their punishment, it was a very, very deep punishment. Part of their punishment was that they had to watch their children kill each other off. And then they were bound in chains under the Euphrates River.
wow,
So, it was brutal, really
yeah,
brutal.
hmm.
Yeah, it's
Um,
tough.
s would because I hear people talk about the Watchers, like, what would
Mhm.
are they different? Are they more like a guardian of, like, the forest or of
Right.
the world? How do you view the Watchers? Are
So
they?
the Watchers, they were the Watcher class angels.
Mhm,
Their station, what they had been charged with, if you will, is that they do watch over humanity, but that's all they were supposed to be, was watchers. They
mhm,
were not intended to interfere with the affairs of humanity. But they saw that the women, human women, they look pretty good, and they entered into a pact with one another. This was a willful pact that they got together and said, okay, we're going to go down there and we're going to get us some women and we're going to make babies because that looks like fun. And they entered essentially like a blood pact with one another, that, where we go one, we go all kind of thing, and that nobody was going to back out and essentially pin everything on one particular angel. So that's what the Watcher class angels were of the 200 that descended onto Mount Hermon purposely to enter into this contract. So that was like the class of angel that they were, was the Watchers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So Maynard says it's only corrupt if the DNA is evil. I feel this isn't the case. I'm thinking he's talking about Sasquatch.
Oh,
Um,
gotcha.
and then, you guys, I don't know. In portals, lack of vocabulary. Some of the forests are so thick that you could run a football team with their armor on and not see them. Yes. Telepathy is the way of God. And HS speak to us. HS. Julie, you have to, I'm not sure the abbreviation of that.
Y- Yeah. I want to make sure that I'm answering any of these questions correctly. So if we ask to expound, please do, because
Mhm.
let me
Sasquatch
see.
Confession says, I feel her journey, okay, your journey is like similar to his. Congratulations on beating the demon of addiction. And
Oh,
addiction,
thank
yeah,
you.
addiction can go to not just like that. It's like you can be addicted to someone that's not good
Hmm.
for you and toxic for you. And you keep,
Absolutely.
and it's like, holy cow. Cause I remember a long time ago when someone's like, oh, you might have to go to Alcohol Anonymous. And it was just letting go of a relationship. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not an alcoholic. But
Right.
come back to this moment, I'm like, wow, I totally know what that means because you have to go through
Hmm.
that step by step. And when some
Yeah.
people, they do the same way with the serotonin and the dopamines in the brain and stuff. It's like that can be addiction to even video games and stuff like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It really can be. And I mean, you're absolutely right. Sasquatch is confessions. Okay, I almost said confessionals. You're right. It is. It is a demon. It's like a multitude of demons, really, that
Yeah.
just come in, and I mean, they're brutal. They are brutal, but you're right. It doesn't have to necessarily be a drug. It can be a relationship. It can be a habit. It can just be a person in general. And there's so many things, but that addiction is not the problem. It is masking the root
Yes.
problem
Yeah.
that's down in there.
Yeah. Right. Down in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 You know.
Totally. So that's where, like, that's how you know if you're healing and doing the inner work. That's why I tell everyone, like, it's about the inner discovery to discover everything from, to yourself to Sasquatch. It's not the discovery of Bigfoot, it's the discovery of yourself and then Bigfoot, right? Or Sasquatch.
Yeah.
It's
I
like go
know.
in and do the inner work and then watch
Yes.
all those things come to you. Like even the physical and the spiritual realm, you'll see them more
Yeah.
interlinked. It's like, yeah, yeah, go
Yeah,
in and get rid of those things.
absolutely.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
it's funny, I say funny, not funny, haha, but more like funny, strange, how many people who have fought an addiction, when they're able to come out of the other side of it, things that they used to really despise about themselves or that they would view as like a weakness, it's actually one of their greatest strengths, right? And so that's part of the twisting of the gifting. That's what my mom's always said, is that, like I hated kids, hated kids, could not stand children. Like I wanted to be sterilized when I was 17 years old because I could not stand kids. I would be the self-righteous one to tell the very exhausted mom of three in the restaurant, can you be quiet? We're trying to eat. So it's disgusting. I know. But I now work with birthing women
Yeah.
and I absolutely adore children. So it's just like that twisting of the gifting in there. But when we come out of this other side, it's wild how many addicts just have bizarre, buku, bonkers, crazy experiences throughout their life,
Mhm.
um, that they've just kind of, shoved away, shoved back in there, or just lumped it in with, man, I really was stoned. Like it's very interesting,
Yeah.
actually, how many recovered addicts are very sensitive too, very sensitive to the other side.
Mhm. Interesting. See, and that's what I thought. Like I've thought, I go, is it the only the people with the near death or death experiences that have had this awakening to this other spiritual side. But to me, I go, nope. I
There.
mean, I had to go through a lot of traumatic events with my
Yes.
child, but it's like that's what woke me up. And then all the
Yep.
unlearning, and it's like, wow, oh my goodness, it's
Yes.
just one thing after the other, right? Oh,
Yes.
it's yeah. So
Yeah.
Lottie Farm said, so back to that clarifying question that we asked for, he says, when Adam was created, they used DNA from something that was here already that had amazing abilities. Neph was different. And so
I mean, I don't have, to my understanding, to my knowledge, in the Bible, it says that Adam was created from the dirt. And just by Yah breathing the breath of life into him, that was a separately created being. Like it says in the Bible, come, let's make man in our image. And that's Yah talking to the host of heaven, because it wasn't just God up there by himself hanging out on a cloud. I mean, he had an entire court of different creations and different beings. I personally do tend to believe that Adam and Eve were not his first creation, because the Bible is not a complete
right.
timeline of history at all. It's
Mhm.
not. It's the good news, which is, the prophecy and the birth and the ministry and the death and the resurrection of Yeshua HaMashiach. So, that is the focus of that. But I tend to believe in pre-Adamic races. I really do.
Mhm.
But I do know that human beings were completely different. They were completely set apart from anything that Yah had created before, which was part of what made Lucifer so angry. He got really self righteous, because he's like, whoa, 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 wait a minute, what? What do you mean these things can? Some tension there.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I will say: human beings were completely different than anything else.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Cool. So here for the ride. So embrace the journey says yeah, another part of the puzzle is the upcoming disclosure of higher intelligent beings, not of this planet. This disclosure may in fact change how religion deals with the new realities. Yeah.
I mean, very well could potentially, do so. And I will never cram my religion down anybody's throat.
Mhm.
I will just share what has happened in my life and the things that I have experienced in my life and that I have seen, and not only mine, but in my closest friends and even people that I'm not very close to, but because the Bible says we got to pray for them, we do. And then these, like, miraculous things happen. So I don't think that the disclosure of, higher intelligence of any sort, I don't feel like that negates the existence of
Mhm.
a divine creator at all. I certainly don't. Just like I don't at all believe that other religious texts, that they negate the Bible. If anything, they definitely support it. And again, that's just my stance. If that doesn't resonate with you, if that doesn't kick it with you, hey, peace be to you, brother. But that is where I'm at. I have a biblical world view.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Belief systems will shift for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah. And that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So Maynard, yeah, see, I've always wondered where you, 'cause- so Maynard, he's one of the watchers. No, he's always saying, "Oh, the watchers." So I never knew until I started going down this fallen angels and watchers. So
Hmm.
he says the book of Enoch was where I coined the term the watchers as Sasquatch. So
Yeah.
that because I heard
Yeah.
something today. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I could see that where, the watchers can be a relative term that is applied to more than one being or one situation, because I know that a lot of indigenous tribes would refer to Sasquatch as, like, the watcher of the forest or the brothers of the forest, or you know what I mean? Like there's all sorts of different terminology. for a variety of things. And, I tend to agree that Sasquatch, they are the watchers of the forest, because I have no doubt in my mind that my goofy butt has been walking down a trail and probably just diddled right past them and had no clue that they
Yeah.
watched me the whole time,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
which is,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
yeah,
was watching another guy that he talks about this type of stuff, but he puts a camera on his backpack. So when he's walking through the
yeah.
forest, he's recording behind him. Wow, he has some great photos. It's like, yep, there's one right there, and there's one right there, peeking up, around the
Yep.
tree. It's like, guess I
Yep,
need to
that's
get one of those.
the Scott Carpenter method. Scott Carpenter, I believe, was the first one that started doing that. And
Mm,
he's got incredible photos of Dogman, and just, I mean, it's wild. Oh yeah, and down here, DNA studies by Dr. Ketchum confirmed that's exactly right. So there was a genetic study, and Scott Carpenter actually talks about that in his book Nephilim Among Us.
okay.
Dr. Melda Ketchum, she did a DNA study, and Scott actually contributed several
Mhm.
DNA pieces, whether it was hair, saliva, whatever. I mean, he contributed a large amount to them. And in that study, it was confirmed
Oh yeah.
that the mitochondrial DNA was human, female, human, right? And the father's side was unknown, and they
Mhm.
ran it through, I can't remember the name of the system, but it's like where all of the samples of all DNA collected around the world, there's like millions of
Yeah.
samples in there. Nothing matched.
Yeah.
Nothing matched. So they tried to say that, oh well, the DNA was tainted, and it's like, okay, well, these are the same labs that put people in prison for life. So are we going to say that they are that incompetent that they managed to botch every single DNA sample? We've got some issues if that be the case.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yep.
Sasquatch Confession says, "Are these watchers ET?"
You know what? I think that so ET, extraterrestrial, which, extraterrestrial, extra land, but then that gets into a whole other, snowball of, look, I don't know what the shape of the earth is, but what I do know is
Yeah.
they be
Right?
lying about
Yeah.
everything.
Well,
Okay.
I learned today that water is extraterrestrial, and it came down here as an extraterrestrial. I'm like, wow, that makes sense. How can I like?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, whoa.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
because it had never rained prior to the flood in the antediluvian world, it had never rained before, because the oxygen level was very different. It was much more dense in here. That's why things were typically a lot bigger, right? So when Noah's talking about it's gonna rain, they're like, "Oh, it's gonna rain," and then it did. So I mean, I could so see that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it was a part of a Sasquatch group that was bringing this up, that we were supposed to connect with water because of the Emoto guy that does the frequency, and water
Yes.
is powerful. Like whatever we do with
Yes.
that water, it's changing. And Sasquatch is like, we need the humanity to go and start playing with the water and honoring it more.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, and then we've brought this up in conversation out in the wilderness, going, there's something about the water. And then
Yeah.
even Sasquatch saying, like, you guys are all looking in the wrong spot. Stop looking up. Start looking
Yes,
down.
looking in the water. I mean, watch the water for anybody that ever followed any of the Q stuff or whatever. One of the biggest thing was watch the water, look at the water. And water does have that like cellular memory. And that's why there was a study, don't get me lying on the name of it, girl, I don't know. But the way that we pump water into our homes at all
Oh,
these
right?
hard, like
Yeah,
right angles,
yeah.
it damages the
It does.
water.
Yeah.
So,
It's
when you're filtering, yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. When you're filtering your water and you allow it to flow naturally, not only are you, skimming the junk out of it
Mhm.
that is put in there, but it is literally rejuvenating the water and reestablishing it. So it's just wild. But as far as what was the question? Something about Sasquatch,
Being
ADD, rabbit
ET.
trail. Being, yes, being ET. I think that it very well could be because, when we're looking at, and again, this goes into the whole what your belief is of the shape of the earth, this, that, and the other. The thing is, they very well could be interdimensional beings, right? So
Mhm.
the dimensions are overlaid
Oh,
on top of one another. And it even says that in the Bible, that the spirit of heaven is at hand. And like if we saw what was going on around us constantly, man,
yeah.
we'd crap our pants and probably pass out and maybe even,
Yeah.
because it's just that very well could be. So I think that it does, that they very well have a different vibration than us, and they're able to tap into that. So they're able to both exist in this realm, but
Yeah.
also somehow tap into that higher vibration and go into the next realm.
See, and that's where Zach and I, so the first time I ever experienced going through, I call it liminal space. So it's like going through a time and space
Yeah.
continuum. And I literally, like thought I was going crazy. So we were going and the mushrooms were getting bigger, bigger and bigger. I'm like, I feel like I'm in Alice in Wonderland or whoever follows the mushrooms. And then next thing you know, I'm like, okay, I think we have to start heading back to camp. And Leslie's like, oh, okay. So we turn around, we go back, we're walking back. And all of a sudden, I touched the last mushroom. I'm like, no. And it called me. And I went over there. I'm like, oh, what a beautiful mushroom. And then I walked back and I'm like, wait a minute. I have no idea where I am. And I looked at her
Oh,
and all I felt was fear, like dread. I mean, oh my God, like I the, it felt like you know how people all of a sudden don't know where they are and they're lost for the rest of their
yeah.
lives? That
Yeah.
feeling of dread. Like, I have no idea.
Mhm.
I'm dead. I have no idea where I am. And she's like, it's okay, Ashley. And next thing you know, I heard from my right, which were two Sasquatch to my right, say, you better help her out and knock her back into her reality. And all of a sudden, I freaking felt like I was falling, got, landed on the ground. And then I come back and
Mhm.
I'm like, where am I? And then like this trail, I'm like, oh my gosh, this trail looks worn. Like we've walked this trail a million times, but it's because they put me on a trail where I would recognize, like, no matter what, I would know where this trail was. And I was
Mhm.
like, this is the gifting hill. Okay. And all of a sudden I started like feeling like I was dizzy and I fell to my knees and I'm like, okay. And all my, like, it felt like all my dense emotions of being human were coming back to me. So all those feelings. And I'm like, okay. She's like, you just went through time and space. You went through a liminal space. And I'm like, how am I ever going to tell anybody this? Right? Like, holy cow. But once you integrate all of these experiences, it's easier to then relay it to people. And then Zach experienced it this summer, but it's like it's off always off of a hill and it's like you're going down. So it's like they showed me this summer that this is how you get to a liminal space. So we were walking up because Zach, it's like, oh, the energy over here is amazing. So we walk up and then all of a sudden he wanted to go back down. I'm like, well, that's weird. Okay. So we start going back down the hill and all of a sudden there's this pathway and it's well trampled and I'm like, okay, where'd this pathway come from?
Yeah.
Interesting. It's a physical pathway. Next thing you know, we're on like the other side of the forest by the river. And Zach's like, how did we get here? And I'm like, we just went through liminal space. He's like
Yeah.
going, like shaking his head and took him, days to integrate that experience. But that stuff's
Mhm.
real. And it's like really you're going into these different frequencies, like you were talking about with like you
Yeah.
they can come in and out of our reality, I believe, because I get glyphs at my house and it's like, well, what would you run all the way over here from the mountains? No, I can't
Yeah,
see.
yeah, exactly. Tony Merkel calls that the bridge, where you are in between here and there,
Mhm.
wherever there is. And sometimes, just depending upon, because whoever they are in the Black Ops, I fully believe that they have figured out the technology of how to tap into that, to
Oh
create
yeah.
the portals, to create,
Yeah.
those situations. But so can these beings, and
Mhm.
then that's when you start getting into the conversation of ley lines and just energy in general. And then the minerals that are in the earth. whether it's like quartz crystals or, whatever it may be, those all draw a certain amount of power. But sometimes those things come into our space, but we can go into their space, sometimes by our own doing, which, no, thank you. I'm going to keep my meat sack on this side of things, because
Yeah.
I have been unwillingly pulled from my body, and I don't
Wow.
like that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
literally like being spirit hijacked, and it's terrifying. I'm good.
Mhm.
I'll stay here. But sometimes we can wander into those spaces. And you hear about the testimonies of people hearing metal doors, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, there is there's an episode called Terror in the LBL, and that's on the confessionals. And it's with a retired police officer that he and his partner experienced just some wild stuff out at the LBL, where they actually had like dogmen come into their camp.
Mhm.
They get a couple shots off on him. They manage to get to the truck, and as they're going to tear out of there, his partner's driving. He's in the bed of the truck, and he flips on the lights, and there's two Sasquatch like standing in this field, and they kind of got the impression that these things were working together, sort of like people have hound dogs and they'll go coon hunting or squirrel
Yeah.
hunting or whatever. It was almost that same kind of thing. But what was interesting is they both had talked about hearing a metal door. This is in the middle of a swamp, right
Yeah.
in the middle of the LBL, the land between the lakes, for those who aren't familiar with the LBL. And there's just this god awful like metal on concrete grinding sound, and then people will see orbs, or they'll see a cryptid, or a combination of all of it. They hear the metal, then here's this orb, and a cryptid falls out of it. I mean, what? So it's almost like when something accesses our realm, it makes a sound,
Yeah.
that what? I mean, there's lots of reports of that, even in the missing 411, that talk about that, guys are out hunting, they're well seasoned hunters. They hear this weird metal grinding sound, and then like this 70 something year old man who's been a hunter his whole life just poof, just gone, completely gone. Nobody ever found nothing. It's like he just disappeared out of thin air. So, what is that?
Mhm. Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, what is that?
Well, and see, and then people are like, "Oh, it's Sasquatch," and I go, "Everyone I've encountered that may not even have believed in Sasquatch, they're always." I find people are saying, "No, they guided me out of the forest, so I wasn't lost." So when it
Right.
comes to these other, cases that people just go, maybe there's the odd rogue dark one, yes, but I'm not,
Right.
but portals, or these other cryptids, like it's a wild world out there, even though it's like I'm only studying Sasquatch here because it's like
Yeah.
you open up those other doors when we go in down the holes of the dog man, or
Right.
I don't know, like there's this totem pole of, he was explaining it, but there's a Sasquatch on the totem pole, and then the top was like a bird man. And I was like, hmm, that's that's that seems to be true, right? Like, yeah, 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 yeah.
Feel like it's inevitable for people who start to go down this path. You start with Sasquatch, and so many people start off with the flesh and blood mentality, but you stay on this path long enough, and brother, some weird stuff comes up. Like I feel like it's inevitable if you're going to continue to try to learn
Right.
and try to figure out what this stuff is.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree.
So,
Because it's like
yeah,
all interlinked somehow,
I
one
agree.
way. But and then even
Yes.
us, like we're trying to get back to and learning our multi-dimensional selves. And it's like we've been here and we've left little clues along the way going, oh, I remember this clue. And it's like a part of you wakes up. I don't
Yeah.
know. Crazy.
Yeah, like deja vu. I would love to know what really is deja vu, because that is wild.
Yep. Yep.
That is a
Oh,
wild experience when you think about it. What is that?
yeah. I've had a couple this week and I'm like, Kate, stop. I've been there. And I have to shake my head. They're like, no, we've never done this. I'm like, oh, yes. Yep. This is way too
Yeah.
real. Way too real. And I just have to
Right.
like grab my head and be like, okay, let this pass. So
Woosah.
yeah.
Exactly.
So Embrace the Journey says Sasquatch may also be a part of the portals that also are being investigated by the government.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think that you know, they know way more about them than we do. And it's really interesting how once you start to really getting close to too much truth, especially if you're vocal about it, you'll either get visits or unalived.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
mean, really, that's kind of it's not kind of that is what happens
Yeah.
is when people start getting too close to the truth, especially when they have a large platform to talk about it. You know, you've got the MIB beating down your door, beaming into your bedroom, or whatever, just jacking with your
Yeah.
life, where they're like, "Shut up."
Stop
So,
it.
yeah,
And HS was Holy Spirit, and then, or it could be AKA higher self. Interesting, right? We were talking about that earlier. Oh, okay. Yeah. Um, Embrace the Journey says in the last congressional meeting on UAPs, portals were brought up. It's starting to get real. What used to be laughed off is now being taken seriously. There are so many. Usually I keep up on the comments. Oh, woof woof, peas on trees. Dogman confessions. So, okay, so Maynard, the more you put into this topic, the weirder it can get. Absolutely. That's why many only get so far and don't go further. Mhm, mhm. Portals opening. I've left my body a few times. I found it peaceful, but where I went was beyond thought. We are a part of it was vast darkness, not scary, just emptiness. Hmm. Yep, yep. What kind of folklore related to Sasquatch in your area do you have?
in my particular area,
Hmm.
I'm not 100% sure because we're relatively new here. We are considered from off, which means we are not from here. So we're originally from Fort Worth, Texas, and we moved to North Central Arkansas. So we've really only been here a little over 2 years now. But what I do know is that the people that are our neighbors up on the mountain, it's like known to them. It's just like, yeah, of course they call them boogers or wood boogers, that there's boogers up here. Um, there is a family that is really close to us that they no longer raise pigs because they just get snatched up. And I mean, they just plain as day will tell you that they stopped raising pigs because they just get murked by these things. And their son was like football captain, like big deal in
Yeah.
town, and he would say outright he's terrified of wood boogers. So, as far as folklore goes, I'm really not sure. I do know that this was indigenous land. We do have a lot of like signifier trees. I'm sure I'm butchering the crap out of that, but they are trees that bend like at a right angle and they all point down to where the streams and the rivers and things like that are. We have a lot of those. We found quite a few arrowheads in the area. So, one of our next door neighbors, like our closest neighbor who butts up to our property,
Yeah.
he is like a walking, talking historian. So every time I get with him, I just want to be like, tell me all the weird crap from around here. Meanwhile, my honey's like, I don't know. So, you know, we'll just have to catch him by his onesies, I guess, and
Yeah.
say, hey, tell me what you know. But it's really it's just known that they're up there. And they have told us, several of the neighbors have said, if you are raising any sort of animals up here, you have to put up lights. You have to have bright lights. And,
Mm.
of course, I'm like, oh, yeah, why is that? And they're like, because the boogers will get him. So my partner's just like,
Or you can put cameras up. They're supposed to be scared of cameras. So someone said, "How
Yeah,
can I keep a Sasquatch out of my house or in the area of my yard?" And someone's like, "Oh, just put some cameras up, some gate
put some
cameras."
cameras up. Yeah, exactly. That's very true.
Yeah.
One thing that I will say, particularly in this area, um, I do feel like the Sasquatch have the ability to like read your intention
Oh
or
yeah.
read your heart or who you are.
Mhm.
The reason I say that, we had initially bought this property with particular family members on my honey's side. And I told him from the very beginning that I did not think that that was a good idea, that something just felt way off. Not even 2 months into it, I was absolutely right. Now we own the land, just us, and we've bought them out. But what I find interesting is that we have never had a negative or scary experience on our property at all.
Mhm.
That every single time that these people were up on the land, something bad happened to them. I mean, like getting covered in ticks, being chased by something. I mean, and it got to where they wouldn't even go up there. Like he wouldn't even let his wife go up there without him because she was scared to go up there, which is
Mm,
wild to me because I've never had that experience. But as the intentions and the truth of things started to come out, it makes perfect sense.
yeah.
Perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, and
So,
like you said, it goes back to intention. Is your our heart
mhm.
open? Are you, it's respecting the land. If you're going through the land and destroying it, and that could provoke a not so good encounter. I'm going to go hunting for Bigfoot. Okay, let go see how that, that's not going to happen, but they
Yeah,
can feel that before you even leave your yard to go and do whatever that intention is, right? So,
right, right. From the very beginning, when we've gone up there, I've just said, hey, look, we are here to, live together.
mhm,
We mean you no harm. Don't bring any harm to me and my family. And we have been clearing out a lot of the deadfall and things like that. But most of like the natural flora and fauna has been choked out
yeah,
from these invasive species of things. And what's wild is since we've started really working and clearing all that stuff out, the wildlife has just responded
awesome.
in a crazy way,
Yeah.
and we're getting these little giftings.
Yeah,
So
so you're purifying the land. And I talked about this
yeah,
on the last live. Is like we come because we are, we are special. Humans are special in their ways. And we're supposed to bring the light and the purification. And that right there just shows me or
yeah,
confirms for myself that you guys are cleaning the land and opening up that space, and it creates more abundance for all that's living
right.
on that land, right? For sure.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Absolutely.
So Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot, our favorite spot, the trees grow sideways and lots of tridents, seems strong magnetic energy, probably strong portals or ley lines. Yeah, see, what are your
Ooh.
thoughts on ley lines? You have any?
Um, so I'm not sure if we have any up here. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, because we essentially live on a massive boulder field. Like when we were looking at drilling a well, they're like, oh yeah, it's probably going to cost you, 40, 50 grand. I'm like, excuse me, what? But because it's like solid rock,
Mm,
um, and we live not far from Devil's Den. So that's really like right there, and there's all sorts of spoopy stuff that has happened up on that trail. And I will tell you, I do not like hiking that trail. I don't at all. We went up there one time. I was vehemently against it, and then after we got off the trail, my honey looked at me and he was like, "Yeah, I don't think we're gonna go back up there." I'm like, "Ooh, you think?" Like, it's just creepy. But that terrain is exactly like what we have on our property. And there are caves, and a lot of those caves are
mm,
old coal mining entrances. And if you've at all looked into the missing 411 versus where they like what do you call it, disappearances are all overlaid, they're almost identical to where these cave systems are. It's wild.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I have someone else that might live out in your area. I did a I was doing no, so I was on his podcast, and he had land like out in the middle of nowhere that has caves, and he's on a mountain. So it sounds very similar. It's like, huh, interesting.
Yeah.
Sasquatch
Yeah.
Confessions. Thank you so much for that donation. Thank you.
Oh,
Appreciate that.
awesome. You're so cool.
Tennessee,
That's
Kentucky,
awesome.
Bigfoot. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most supportive, amazing communities. It's like, yes, I'm so blessed to have, like this community. I found ever since Bigfoot going into this was just like, wow, the support that a lot of
Yeah.
and then I guess your vibe attracts your tribe type of thing too, right? It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
they're so supportive. Everyone's for growth, and it's that back and forth knowledge. They give knowledge, you give knowledge. It's back and forth. It's like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Absolutely. Well, and I think for a long time, especially like when I first started, getting into this space, it was kind of toxic
Hmm.
in the like Bigfoot community. You have these like experts or professionals, which what does that even mean? Like
I don't
seriously,
know.
what
Right?
letters do you
Yeah.
have behind your
Yeah.
name that says I'm a Bigfoot? Like,
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of that. And what's
Mhm.
interesting is it's almost like those guys are controlled opposition because they've
Yeah.
been in the space for 20, 30 years and they go hollering in the woods and smacking trees with sticks. They have nothing to show for it. But then you
Yeah.
have the regular everyday human being,
Having
like
incredible experiences.
yes, exactly, and documenting it and bringing
Yeah.
forward, like, proof, but see, there's
Yes.
there's another part of how asleep our society really is, because
Mhm.
they could have a Sasquatch pop out of a portal right down in front of them, and they'd be like, "Cool story, bro," and keep walking,
Yeah.
So it's like if the proof is too good, then it's CGI. If
Yeah.
it's not, it's a blob squatch. I mean, there's no winning in this, but there's been a shift, especially with, like what you're doing with your platform, the podcast, the vlogs, things like that, of everyday
Mhm.
people really just being like, what is this? That it started to shift away from that like toxic
Mhm.
space and into like, hey man, look, I don't know what's happening. You don't know what's happening, but let's not know together.
Yeah, and let's see what we can, like, put this puzzle piece
Yeah.
together, where we go, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
love, yeah,
Exactly.
cool. So Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot says, "We also noticed lots of boogers, TNNCGA area, being the smaller ones that are more daring, and the TNKY, Tennessee and Kentucky, I'm thinking, we get the
Oh,
bigger,
yeah.
more family type, so big differences in species."
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Yep. So my honey's actually from Tennessee. So he's from Antioch, Tennessee. And up there in Appalachia, man, like they're different. They differ up there. That's scary. It really
Yeah,
is. I mean,
yeah,
like, and even in East Texas, I've kind of noticed that just, on my own studies. And again, I'm autodidactic, so I'm self-taught, and I have no doubt that I've got at least one or two things that are not right up in there. But I do my best. But
yeah.
what I've noticed is that a lot of the beings that are in like the East Texas kind of region, they're very, very aggressive, extremely aggressive. And it sort of mirrors what you have in like the Tennessee, Kentucky, that region right up there in that LBL region, where they're very violent. There's these reports of these things being extremely violent. So I wonder what that is. I wonder why would that be?
Yeah. Yeah,
You
see,
know?
maybe it's the climate they live in, or maybe because they don't want the people to intrude on them. And the type of people
Hmm.
that are intruding, maybe they just don't have the energy that they want to deal with. Maybe they're just a little, you know, they're elders, and it's like, just leave us alone. Just leave us alone.
Hey, it could always be meth squatch too. You know what I'm saying? Like that stuff will mess you up. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, the Appalachian Mountains have been here like for always. So there's no way that they don't hold some incredible energy and history and really power in them. So it could just be that inadvertently humanity is being disrespectful of some, you know what I mean? Like, you never know.
Mhm. Yeah. No, there's so much. There's
Yes, it can get overwhelming.
yeah. They're just talking amongst themselves. You guys, let me know if you have any questions because, like, I'm at the bottom of the list now because, like, I'm so
Oh
lost.
yeah.
Ask, are you still up there north of the border? Yes, I am still up in Alberta, north. Yep, north of the border, up in Alberta, up in Alberta.
Alberta
Yep.
in Canada, where it's like so cold. Man, let me tell you, it is currently outside. It is 30 degrees. Oh no, sorry, 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm freezing to death. I'm freezing. My blood is too thin. This Texas native is like, blah, 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 blah. He probably wears
I
shorts and a tank top in this kind of weather.
right? Maybe. I love the heat. No, I do and I don't. It all depends, really. I think it depends on what
Yeah,
type of heat. I have people that keep on wanting to drag me to Texas. Like, come out and do the Bigfoot out here. It's because I've taken some expeditioners from Texas out here. And they're like, it
yeah,
gets so hot, your shoes start melting. I'm like, I
yeah,
don't know about that.
yeah. I
That's
will
that
tell
seems
you,
hot.
I will take Texas heat
Yeah.
over Arkansas heat any day because in
Yeah.
Texas it's dry. It's
Mm,
absolutely dry. It's like a hair dryer, but here in Arkansas it's moist. Hate that word, but I mean, it just sucks the moisture out of your body. And I've never sweat so much in my life ever. It looks like we've been swimming and all we've been doing is working out. I raise quail. So we've been out here taking care of the birds or,
nice.
tending to the garden or whatever it is that we're doing, soaked from head to toe. So yes, Texas heat, I'll take that over swimming pool heat.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, I guess we're at the hour mark or 6 minutes after
Yeah.
the hour. Humid heat is the worst. Awesome. But, anyways, I want to
Yes.
thank you, Kelly, for being here.
Yeah.
And I would love to bring you back whenever you're available. And yeah,
Absolutely.
sure. Definitely
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
This has been fun for sure.
Yes, my shirt does say yes. That's correct. But no, I definitely appreciate you being here and sharing some of your stuff and going deeper. And
Yeah,
yeah, stay in touch. And thank you, everyone, for
absolutely.
showing up and, you
Yeah.
all
Thank you
that.
guys. If
Yeah.
y'all are interested at all, to kind of go further down this trail, this is the book of Enoch that the version, I have several versions, but this one was actually written by Timothy Alvarino and the hosts of the Blurry Creatures podcast. And what I love most about it is that it really lays things out in a way that you can really understand, because for me, I'm a little simple, but I love that they have added conceptual art in here, right? Like
Beautiful.
what
Yeah.
it potentially could have looked like, with these different scenarios. So I love that. And then the Genesis 6 Conspiracy by Gary Wayne. And then, of course, the Word, the Cipher Bible is my newfound favorite of all of them. I absolutely love it because it teaches the Hebrew words and Hebrew names for people, places, things. And it's just, oh, chef's kiss. So
Mhm.
that would be my recommendation for anybody who wants to go further down this rabbit hole. And you guys can reach out to me at any time if you have any questions.
Where can they find you? I know TikTok is
Yeah,
a
yeah. So I'm
location.
on TikTok. I believe that my handle on TikTok is at but what do wino. I can, if you want, I can send you some tags to my socials, and then if anybody wants to email me, you can email me. It's Kelly Kelli Stone Stone, like a rock. Kelly with one eye Stone 87 at proton.me. You can email me. Again, I'm not a theologian. I'm just like a homeschooling mom who's trying to figure this out.
Yeah, I
So,
feel ya.
yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Get it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Kelly.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
well,
Thank you so much.
yeah, we'll take care and we'll
You
chat
too.
soon and definitely have you back as I see everyone's like, yep, bring her back, bring her back. So,
Oh, thank you guys. Thank you. I was so nervous. So thank you guys for being gentle.
yeah, right. Awesome. Okay, well, have
Yeah.
a great evening. Good night, everyone.
Okay. Bye, guys.